Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are watching from. I hope you are doing well. So today, Nelly and we are on another episode again on our children, their safety, where we raise awareness around safeguarding anything that concerns our children because we love them so dearly and we want to make sure we protect them and preserve their health and well-being, as well as helping them to grow up to be confident, mature, and responsible citizens. So today, myself and Nelly, and for those who don't know me, my name is Peggy Barre. I am a survivor empowerment coach. I work with survivors of domestic abuse, the founder of Arise and Thrive Academy, where we inspire, empower, and support survivors of domestic abuse to heal, rebuild their lives, and become confident and resilient parents. So I'm going to pass you over to Nelly to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another session number 10. My name is Nelly Kwasunwe. I'm a social worker and a transformational life coach, founder of Clarify the Uniqueness Limited. And we are just so happy to be here. Our children, their safety. So today, we'll be talking about the challenges that children from ethnic minorities face and how they can be supported. Because we know children in the diaspora, there are so many issues that our children go through. The systems are very different. But then how do we help or support our children to become confident? We cannot, as parents, we cannot just expect our children to be confident. It starts from us because the home is where the child or our children learn first. So parents are children's first teachers. So it needs to start from the home and with the parents or the adults at home. So today we have many different subheadings that we will do our best to shed light on from personal experience and from professional experience, because all we want to do is to raise awareness so that we bring up confident children.
Absolutely, that's so true, Nelly. And yes, so every 2 weeks we really have exciting topics, and it is amazing that some of these topics, it's actually somebody actually contacted me the other day and said, you know what, Peggy, some of these your sessions that you're running, honestly, I'm really learning from it. And so that is why, even if it's just one person, if it is just one person, if I can change the life of one person, at least that is a life safe. So yes, just like Nelly
I
mentioned.
think just before you continue, let me just interrupt. So today I
Yeah,
just want to indicate that this session is being recorded. So
yeah.
if you are watching, just to indicate that due to other commitments, we had to adjust our program, but we didn't want not to have this program. So that's why we decided to record it. But if you watch this video, any comments that you leave, Peggy and myself, we will read through all the comments and we will reply. So I just wanted to let you know that it's recorded. Thank you. Over to you, Peggy.
Oh, thank you, Nelly, for that reminder. Yeah, so just like Nelly mentioned, children from ethnic minorities, especially children who are in this part of the world, like in the Western world, they grow up with different challenges. Children in general have their different challenges that they face. But I do feel that children from ethnic minority have like extra challenges which they face. And sometimes we, as parents, we may ignore it and then just generalize it and say, you know what, no, those are just normal challenges by children. But no, our kids from ethnic minority have specific challenges, which I think sometimes is just reasonable and being fair to pay attention, you know. So they face unique challenges such as identity struggle. Some of them struggle with identity. They face challenges like discriminations, even though sometimes they may want to brave it up or even try to see how they can deal with it themselves. But that doesn't negate the fact that they are going through it and they may sometimes be suffering in silence. And also they also facing that pressure to fit in within a community or a society, especially if they were not born in this in the society, because I'm sure some of our kids they came from abroad, you know, some even the ones that are born here, but the fact that they've got a different skin color, of course, that alone kind of help, you know, pose an extra challenge for them. And then the ones that are coming into the system, you know, from a different culture, they're coming from a different country into a different culture, into a different system. Everything is just so shocking for them. They also struggle to fit in within within their new society, within the new society. So but one thing that we always need to know is that despite the challenges that these children face, you know, if we give them the right support, then they can grow up with confidence, pride, and with resilience. But the first thing first is, first of all, as parents, to first of all acknowledge the fact that these challenges do exist. And then we can now start thinking, how can we support these children to overcome these challenges, you know, and become confident and resilient in the society? Yeah.
Yeah, that's really true. Identity is very, very important, though a lot of the times it's taken for granted because as let me say, as children or as teenagers, is that stage where they are struggling with identity. And then when they go to school, there are many other things around their identity. And I'm not talking just about teenagers, even from very young children. Like
Yeah.
I will recall when I came into this country many years back with my children, the
Mm-hmm.
area we were living in was is a white dominated area. So in the
Mm-hmm.
school that my children were attending, there were we were the second Black family in that school. So
Wow.
when my children went to school, children will always come and touch their skin that, oh, I thought it would come off. And then imagine my children, they'll be like, how would you be thinking that my skin will come off? But the white children, they couldn't understand.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll be like, oh, your skin is so my children allow them to touch the skin and they were like, oh, your skin is really nice. Your skin, what do you do? And my daughter was like, I have a bath every day. And I was like, what? You have a bath every day? And then my daughter was surprised. Is it not okay to have a bath every day? And then she said, sometimes she has a bath twice a day. And you know, things like that, that is cultural shock. Because
Yeah.
for my daughter, I'll speak of my daughter. My daughter was surprised. The other
Mm-hmm.
children were surprised as well because my daughter was surprised in the sense that when she said she has a bath every day and sometimes twice a day, the other children were like, can you have a bath every day? So so that's a massive difference. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
there are just so many things that around identity that is very different.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen a lot of videos that children make fun of my African parents because the way we react, yes, we are in a different community. But a lot of the
Yeah.
times, the way we react or we respond to situations, children find it funny or embarrassing because they look
Mm-hmm.
into it that their their mates who are different
Yeah.
from who are not from the ethnic minority, they react or they respond different. But why is it that their African parents over exaggerate or react the way they do. So sometimes our children find our reactions embarrassing. But if it's at home, just everyone at home, it's okay. But then when it's outside or when there's a stranger, the children feel embarrassed. So it's for us parents, not that we change our culture, no.
Yeah.
But again, is how do we do for our children
Yeah.
be confident with who they are,
Yeah.
for them to accept their culture and their identity?
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that we as parents, first of all, need to understand is, first of all, we just need to understand what is identity in the first place. Because I'm sure sometimes the term use identity, people just say like identity, they really don't know the definition of it, what encompasses identity. Because if we as parents actually understand what identity means, then we can actually be able to kind of tell our children what it means, so that when they go out there, they can embrace that their identity with pride. So identity again is just like, well, I'm just going to read from the, Google it, and just to give what AI gave me. So identity, it says, is your unique sense of self, a complex combination of your personal attributes, your experiences, and social role that define who you are. And it goes further to say it encompasses your personality, your beliefs, your values, and memories, but also includes social characteristics like ethnicity, group affiliation, and the role you play in the society. And it goes further to say aspect of identity means your unique name. That one caught my attention. It means your unique name, your personality traits, your thoughts and preferences are all part of your individual identity. And so these are some of the things that, if we as parents understand these things, even for ourselves, it changes our perspective. It changes the way we view ourselves. It changes the way we try to minimalize, or is it minimalize? Is that a word? Minimize ourselves, right? Let's take, for example, names, right? We for our culture, we have our unique names. And whether the names may sound whatever, it must sound left, right, center, or sound whichever, but the meaning of those are names, although it sounds weird, the meaning are always wonderful. They are very, 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 very nice. They've got very, very nice meaning to them. And right, for somebody, for example, my name is Nuio. In fact, if only you can pronounce it. And somebody may be thinking that, what sort of name is that? Just by that name, they may like already start to judge you and start to even demean you or even disrespect you just because of that name. But beneath that name means a lot. So if we don't understand, even from our names, starting from our names, because again, names, sometimes children will discriminate, or children will bully our children, or some children will bully our children because of their names, right? But if we educate our children to understand the meaning of their names and understand their values, their culture, where they come from, why they do what they do, why they eat what they eat, for them to be able to embrace their meal, embrace their all everything that surrounds them, then if they are aware, that means they can actually defend that their identity. They can actually stand up and say, you know what, even though my name may sound like this, my name is beautiful because it means this. And then they say that with pride. And by them saying that, they can educate the other children, maybe who they're not even aware of why he or she is called that name. you know just the example that you gave about your daughter, then for them being surprised that they have a shower once or even twice a day. It is for us, it is how we were brought up. That it's normal, it's okay to have a shower once or twice a day. That forms part of identity, forms part of our culture, our values. So we all need to kind of be able to understand all of these things, embrace them, and then educate our children so that they can be aware of these things in such a way that they can defend themselves confidently if need be. So yeah, I don't I don't know whether you have anything to add on that.
Yeah, I think identity on its own is massive because
Yeah.
it just takes up everything about a person.
Mm-hmm.
Today, I'll share about my daughters. So it's good when we have certain conversations, like when a child asks a question, it's good for a parent to be honest. Though
Mm.
again, I'm hesitant to say honest in the sense that sometimes the honesty can be very hurtful, but
Mm-hmm.
it's good to be honest with the child.
Yeah.
So sometimes a child might ask, did you plan to have me?
Mm.
Because when we were back home, we didn't even think of asking such questions. But
Yeah.
here, that's what children ask because to them, it forms part of their identity.
Absolutely.
That because the kind of questions that they ask, I'll tell you a story of another of my daughters. So she was born back home. And when we came here, after some time, she kept on asking me, Mom, is it true I'm adopted? And I'm like, I couldn't imagine. She was still in primary school. And I couldn't imagine where all of that came from. And I was
Mm.
like, what does that even mean? Because I always like them to explain what they mean. So I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
what does adopted mean? And she explained it the right way. And I was like, no, I gave birth to you. And she was like, okay, prove it. I'm like, how do I prove that I gave birth to you? I said, I've got your birth certificate. He said, no. He said, she said she is not sure that I gave birth to her because I don't even have a photo of her. And honestly, I didn't have any photo of her when she was a baby.
Mm-hmm.
So she kept on asking me because when I came, I didn't travel back home straight away. I was here for
Mm-hmm.
such a long time before I traveled. But I was saying that I'm sure I have photos of her when she was a baby to prove to her because to her, whatever I was saying meant nothing. She only wanted a photograph
Purchase.
as
Yeah.
proof. So eventually, after a couple of years, I traveled. You can imagine the trauma that she went through. But
Yeah.
when I eventually traveled, that was the first thing that was on my mind. I went through the photo albums, took photographs while I was still back home. I sent them to her. I sent them when I sent photos when I was pregnant because at the back of photographs they always put the dates. So
Yeah.
I took the front of me being pregnant and the back showing the date. And then I took when she was born and things like that and things like that. That was how she then believed that she is not adopted. So along the
Mm.
line, I was asking, where did all that come from? Because I, it's not a word that even me, I could use it.
Yeah.
It so happened that it was a payback from from her sister because she used to look for a lot of trouble. So her sister learned about adoption, and then because since the sister is the older one, she was always getting in trouble because of the younger one, and the younger one
Mm-hmm.
was the one looking for trouble. So then the older sister learned about adoption, and then that's how she told her that, haha, you are adopted. Imagine. So now when I brought these photos, that was resolved. And then I was like, that was when I found out because I was asking, where did this come from? And then I got it because the older sister realized that when she said that, the younger sister, the problems that she was looking for, calmed down because she was not sure. So again, imagine if I did not have the proof, what
Yeah.
could have happened to her identity? Because at that
Absolutely.
time, for the number of years that I didn't have the proof, she was very quiet. She was
Mm.
different. She was different. But then when I brought the photographs, she was like, so everything, she knew that because she was thinking that she's not part of the family.
Mm.
So you can imagine certain things because the way children in the West they process their information is very different from the way
Yeah.
we do. So when a child asks a question, is to give the
Mhm.
child the honest, best question you can. It is pointless for you to give a wrong answer or make up an answer because these children are very, very clever. You can tell them now and you think that, oh, it's over. They'll come back again. Mind you, they will not forget what you said before. Sometimes they
Yeah,
come again just for you. They still want you to tell more about it.
absolutely. Yeah.
Because, like, what I find is, which again is still part of the identity, is my children, they like now and again to come and be asking me like, oh mom, how was when you were pregnant with me? How was your pregnancy? How long were you in labor? What time did you give birth to me? How long were you in
Hmm.
hospital? You know, for us, that's not, we didn't even know. But here, those are the kind of questions children will ask. And imagine
Yes.
if you don't tell the child, they feel like they don't know everything that they are meant to know. And
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
way, it impacts the way they see themselves. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm talking of being honest when you're explaining things to your children.
Yeah. And that is so true, Nelly. And that also it kind of reminded me of this sentence that there was one time that, well, honestly, to be there was one time my coach, that the time that I started seeking for like personal growth, I was going through my personal growth, and I had a coach that was helping me through the process. And I remember her asking me one day, why was I born? And who are you and why were you born? And that question, this again are the things that it kind of constitute our identity. Because if we don't know things like that, we first of all don't even know, why do we even exist? Why do we exist? And this remind it kind of made me, each time I'm talking to parents, I usually tell them that, you know what, no matter what, whether you are angry, whether in what, I don't know what, no matter what happened, never ever you make your child feel like you didn't give birth to them intentionally. Because I've seen parents who, in fact, I've heard parents tell me that, Peggy, my mom said to me she gave birth to be my mistake. I gave birth to you by mistake. And sometimes kids will push parents to a point where some words may come out of our mouths where we cannot take it back. Once it's out, and they hold on to it. The worst is to make your child feel like, you know what, it was a one night stand, or it was just a mistake, or that sort of thing. That child, it dampens that child's self-esteem, you know because that child will live as if, you know what, he or she wasn't wanted on this earth, and that is just by mistake. So these are some of the things that, just like you said, it constitute the identity. They want to know whether they were loved, whether they were planned, to give birth to them, how, when they came, what was the mood, were people happy, how were they received, all those type of things. It makes them kind of feel precious, or feel, that they're really valued and wanted. And again, one thing that we also need to kind of talk about this identity thing is, again, is about the fact that, just like you said, Nelly, there's sometimes that things happens, you know, again, let me say, for example, like before I got married, I had my first son before, so again, these are things that sometimes you get into relationship, maybe the child, you had your child before and came into a relationship, and maybe that child may not actually, at one point you may think that, oh no, what, let me just keep certain information from that child. But as that child grows older and gets to a certain age, it's always important to let them know, and let them know as early as possible, and also tell them the truth of everything that happened. Because I think that sometimes parents, we try to kind of patch things here and there, and try to keep some information. I know it's not every think that we have to, but we have to manage the information, but make sure we are as truthful as possible for the best interest of that child, so that as they grow, if we give them the information, they can now make an informed decision, which direction they want to choose. If they want to choose go left or go right, at least they've got the information at hand to make that decision that they want. But if we keep them in the dark, that also begins to affect their identity, because certain times if we say certain things, like for example, my son, I tell you, there were times that only God knows what was happening going on in her head, in his head. He had a lot of questions because he used to experience things. He used to see the difference, how things were happening, but he couldn't understand why. Why were these things happening? Why was he the scapegoat? Why was he that? So he did not understand. But when I finally told him, it made sense. I remember the day when I told him, he just told me, he said, Mom, I knew it. That's what he said. He said, Mom, I knew it. And then I was like, what do you mean? And then that is when he started telling me the chains of events, like, his own experience that he was experiencing, and I was looking at him, I was like, as a child, you would think that, but they know, they can feel it, they know. So sometimes we may think that we're keeping things, it's about being honest. And when we give them that information, they can now know which direction to take. And that is going to play a massive a role as well in their identity, because they know who they are, they know where they're coming from, they know what happened. Then it's now the way forward. Which direction do they want to make the way forward, and which direction is best for them? So that constitutes the identity. And again, at point, especially when they're teenagers, because at the time even he was going through his hormones, that teenage, and then everything was just ramping in his head. I tell you, it was hard. There were times that I would cry with him. There were times that he would just come and he would cry and cry and cry, and I'll just join him. We'll cry and cry and cry. But again, we were doing that. It was a way of supporting. I was really, really supporting him through that process. I even remember one time that I had to, in fact, I had to go and buy because he was so low and he was struggling to even fit in. I had to do a motivation board where I had to write, like, type. I printed quotes, like, confident building quotes, self-esteem quotes, and I put them all on the board and I put them by his bedside. So every time he woke up, the first thing he would see those quotes. And sometimes he used to say, "Oh, Mom, those things they don't work. They don't work. Just remove them." I said, "No, just leave them there. Leave them there." And gradually, he kind of started embracing himself. He understood why things happened the way they did. And he actually fought himself out of it. And I think that made him the resilient boy or resilient young man that he is today. So again, these are so important. Just like you said, Nelly, we need to be as truthful as possible to help our children through that path.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, there's that aspect of being truthful that you
Mm,
have talked about. And I just remember, like back home, children, vital information is hidden from children until they get to adulthood. And sometimes they never hear that information from their parents.
mm,
Unfortunately, they hear from other people.
yeah.
Imagine how damaging that can be. And
Yeah.
there've been a lot of instances where a child grows up thinking that A is the father until they get to adulthood. They keep thinking
Mm-hmm.
that A is the father. And then somewhere along the line, they discover that A is not their birth father.
Yeah.
Here there's a massive difference here in the when I talk here is where we are
Yeah.
in the Western world, where a child as young as they can understand, they know that
Mm-hmm.
this is my birth father and that is my stepfather.
Yeah.
But for us, I honestly, I can't even remember if I knew about stepfather before I came
Mm,
to this country. I knew about stepfather when I got into this country. Because what I
Yeah.
used to know is they would say, oh, this child resembles the neighbor. And it was just like a laugh about thing. But it was
Yeah.
started thinking, oh, it made a lot of sense. When
Absolutely.
that's how they hide information and there's no truth in it, there's no honesty in telling the child. And when the child discovers it, imagine how heartbreaking it is. Because first, it's not just with their identity, first, the trust of the parent who hid that
Mm-hmm.
information from them. And it, it might be a mistrust that probably the child might never, if they don't have real support to get over that.
Mm-hmm.
And imagine that mistrust will not end only with the immediate parent, it would
Yeah.
extend to their relationships and probably they'll end up in their lives never trusting because the one person that they thought were their everything.
Yeah.
So it's
Absolutely.
very important to be truthful. Here we have age appropriate information. It's not that you carry all the adult dung and dump on the child. No.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we are able to break down information depending on the age
Mm-hmm.
of the child. So then
Yeah.
the child knows. Because even like sometimes you get into a relationship when you have a child, and if a child sees the male figure and the child just calls dad or whatever, call as their father, you'll see a child who is not even, let's say a child, the mother
Mm-hmm.
will say, that's not your dad,
Yeah.
which is okay because actually that's not the child's father.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's for us to be making when is those of us who have come from ethnic minority
Yeah.
to learn that it is okay to be truthful because a lot of the time we cover things and cover things and cover things until there's nothing more to cover, but we still want to cover. And imagine the child not knowing their identity. And then sometimes they are hearing different things from other people and they're thinking, what is going on?
Yeah.
That has I've not been told at home, but other people are saying.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
And
there was
the worst thing, yeah, the worst thing is for them to hear it outside or hear it from
yes,
somewhere else. And to be
yeah,
honest with you, these are certain things that sometimes you may develop even hatred for that parent because
yes,
you kind of like tell that parent you know you can't really hate your parent. Why didn't they tell you these things early enough? You know, so that at least you are aware and even go through the shock. If you want to feel angry, be angry, but then go through the motion rather than leave it till last minute.
yeah.
So we're talking about identity, and there's one thing again we talked about discrimination. So we've talked about identity. Identity is a massive factor that we've talked about, and again, like I said, we've talked about why it's very important to tell our children their identity, help them with their identity struggles early enough. Tell them about their culture, tell them about their values, tell them about anything that you feel is important to them defining that identity. So that is the way we can support them. So that just like Nelly said, we don't need to hold things in secret, and not tell them, even if it means it might hurt them temporarily, but they will heal from it rather than leave it to the last minute, which is not good. So we've talked about identity. The second thing we talked about, which is also a struggle for our ethnic children, is discrimination. And identity can even go hand in hand with discrimination because if we don't, first of all, start telling our children certain things early enough, it 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 may expose them to more discrimination if that is the right way to put it. Because when you know identity, I would talk for myself. Like I always say, I knew my father when I was 18. Like when I knew my father, like knowing who my father, like seeing my father's face when I was 18. I always say, if I wasn't brought up to be a resilient child, then only God knows, how I felt, how the way I felt right up to that moment, you know. And when you don't know your identity as a child and these things are kept away from you, first of all, you grow up with low self-esteem. You grow up as a child that is like you don't always fit in, because as a child, I never even I couldn't even fit in even amongst my uncle's children. I always felt like the neglected one. I always felt like the beggar. I always felt like the outsider. Had it been, I knew that my dad was existing and that my dad wasn't only a this, my dad was my dad had money, my dad was rich, my dad was doing well, so things like that maybe would have changed my perspective as a child, but I grew up, that information was hidden from me, so that again affects you in such a way that people start to discriminate, because the way you talk, the way you present yourself makes you first of all vulnerable. And when you're vulnerable, discrimination sets in, where people start to, because what's discrimination? People kind of choosing to do things for others and leave you behind because they see you like you're the less valued kind of person, or what, whichever way you want to put it. So that is one aspect of discrimination. But then we looked about the bigger picture of discrimination itself, especially for our ethnic children in this country. They're discriminated for different reasons. First of all, their race, their color, the skin color, their accent, who they are, those things. And that's systematic discrimination as a whole, whether we like it or not. I know people will say, oh, yes, it's improved, but no, it is still there. There's systematic discrimination. So our children are not just going through that systematic discrimination, they are going through discrimination for the fact that they do not even know their identity. They are struggling to fit in, and all of those things put together. And then think about it, about the pressure that they also get in school. Maybe we know with the school system, they go to school and all of that. So sometimes our kids come back home, even though they may not open their mouth to say anything, only God knows what is going through their head and through their minds. And this is why I always say it's very, very important that in spite our busy schedule, in spite the fact that we also have to be struggling to put food on the table, sometimes it's always good to put ourselves in their shoes. What are they going? What are they feeling? What are they going experiencing? And how can we support them? Which I think episode like this is very, very important to kind of draw that awareness, to make sure that we make sure that we really, really, really support our children wherever is needed. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know, Nelly.
Yeah, you've talked about discrimination there. Yes, discrimination is common, but the
Mm,
worst discrimination is when an individual feels inadequate.
mm,
Because when you feel inadequate, you discriminate against yourself.
yeah.
Because, for example, you will see, let's say you see a piece of fruit, say bananas, and you want to eat it. But then you already have so many judgments about yourself.
Mhm,
And then you already have answers in your head that if you ask for it or if you take it, this and that will happen. You
mhm.
feel so inadequate. You are discriminating against yourself. You are
Yeah.
judging yourself for something that if you just ask, probably they'll not even care about it. You'll have it. Which
Mm-hmm.
goes again, like all what we are saying, goes back to the identity. And again, it's for the parents, because if a parent makes a child to feel loved and valued,
Mm-hmm.
the discrimination, the impact of the discrimination will not be as severe as a child who doesn't have that support
Yeah.
in place. So, which is why it's very important that we as parents let's not just be there for our children physically,
Mm-hmm.
or again, let us not just be busy going out, picking shift, looking for work to get money to buy food. What if you go out there, get the money to buy so much food at home, but then your child is at home, low esteem, anxiety sets in, depression sets in, and by the time you bring that, they're not there to have it. What will be the need for that? There are
Mm.
small things that parents need to put an eye on, because now in this noisy world, what I am saying is there's a lot of importance being placed on materialism. But
Mm.
then emotions, we are emotional beings,
Yeah.
but then we forget the emotional side of things. And I
Yeah.
feel that parents, we need to start with ourselves first, because okay, you talked about your experience with your first son.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine that you imagine that your son heard of his origin
Mm-hmm.
much earlier, but not from you. Your relationship with your son now could have been very different from the way it is now.
Yeah.
So that's something that parents need to be sensitive, monitor the child to know when
Yeah.
to disclose certain information. Because when children get to a certain age and they start becoming curious, it shows that they are ready.
Yes.
And it is that time for parents, they say, spill the beans.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, a lot of parents will hide and distract when the child comes to ask for that. Either the child just to send the child away, or they'll bring something else. And then the child does not have that information. And
Mhm.
it is even worse now with social media, because the connections that children can make and the information they can find, it's far more than what we even till now
Absolutely.
know how to get those information.
Yeah.
So we need to upskill as parents. We need to upskill.
It's so true. Very, 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 very true. And honestly, like I always say, I was so glad. And again, sometimes as parents, when we say these things, it relieves us. It relieves you because can you imagine like holding you and two things here. One, it releases you, it relieves you, from that thing that you've been holding. Secondly, I always say, let us not be afraid to be vulnerable because, like I always say, we as parents, we can only do our best. Whatever thing that happened, whatever thing you did your best at the time with whatever knowledge, capability, whatever you had at that time. And you did your best, the best that you could do at that time. So sometimes I always say, maybe some parents don't want to say this thing because maybe they are shameful, they're feeling like maybe they're going to be judged or feeling like because it is okay to be vulnerable. And it's okay to even admit that you know what, you even made error. Because come on, nobody is perfect. We're all humans. And when we learn to be vulnerable, we're also teaching our children that what, it's okay to make mistake and it's okay to be vulnerable. It's not gonna, we don't want to prove all the time like we are superhuman beings that we don't make errors and all of that. No, we are showing that perception that we're showing to our children is just the wrong perception. We need to tell them that sometimes it's okay to put our hands up and say, you know what, I messed up. But in that messing up, I learned something. I learned a lesson, and this is what I learned. I learned A, B, C, D. And I am taking this lesson with me into the next chapter of my life. That is what we need to embrace and teach our children.
Yeah.
Another thing that I don't know whether you wanted to say something
Yeah.
there.
Just to add a bit there, that
Mhm.
it's not everything that we tell our children that they will
Yeah.
learn. Our
Mhm.
children observe us.
Yeah.
We think that we are smart, but our children are smarter, because They see us, they understand us. Just because they don't tell us what it is doesn't mean that they don't know.
Yeah.
So when you do things, children learn through observation.
Mm-hmm.
They will repeat what they've observed and not what you've told them to do.
Yeah.
So that's where we need to be role models. If you have done something wrong, raise your hand and say, yeah, I did wrong, but I've learned, just
Mm-hmm.
like what you said, Peggy.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no point to stick with the ego and say, no, I'm right, I'm right. There's just no point in that.
Yeah.
Because at one point in everyone's life, you would be vulnerable.
Yeah.
It's for you to accept that vulnerability, because there, what are the lessons for you to learn in that situation? It doesn't mean that you'll be vulnerable the whole life, but
Mm.
because of the ego, you want to pretend that you are not vulnerable. And then you are putting yourself in a more difficult situation. And then our
Mm-hmm.
children, they will observe that you are vulnerable, but you don't want to admit that you are vulnerable. And then, unfortunately, when they observe that, it's highly likely they will repeat that same behavior, which is not
Yeah.
helpful to them. And that can contribute to them being discriminated, if, say, with their peers or when they're in school. And, if we bring up a child to be confident and they go out, whether anywhere they go, and there's that aspect of discrimination, a child can stand for themselves, even if they are alone, because they are confident. They can stand up for themselves. But if that child doesn't have that confidence, when they start talking, because the child doesn't feel worthy enough to even express themselves, they already open themselves to be discriminated upon and to be bullied. So it makes it even worse.
Absolutely. That's so true. That is so true. One thing that we also wanted to talk about is, well, anyway, we've been talking about the second point, which is how parents can provide emotional and cultural support for these children, which we've been having that conversation with, already on. So again, it's first of all, like Nelly said, is trying. I know in this country, Nelly, especially for some parents, single parents, you're trying to work, you're trying to put food on the table, you're trying to provide for the kids' well-being and all of that. It can be overwhelming. And sometimes we may kind of not even have the time to really sit down and actually find out what the child is facing in terms of their own emotions and their own emotional challenges that they're going through. And so, just like Nelly said, it sometimes is to be conscious of, try as much as possible, sometimes even just by asking that simple question, like when they come back from school, how was your day? How was your day? What did you do in school? Just to, I know kids sometimes will just like say, my day was fine. My day was a normal day. Like my son was saying, it was just a normal school day. And again, they might also be saying that because they just want to also just brush it off and then go and do their own thing. And sometimes we just need to learn to prop a little bit more, prop a little bit more. Let them go a little bit more. If you say what's the normal day, what is the normal day? Just at least get them to talk a little bit. Get them to talk a little bit. And like we have said in other shows, Nelly, is first of all try to make the environment conducive and comfortable so that we make it home. Outside there is like a jungle where everything is happening. Everyone is trying to eat on everyone. And when they manage to leave the school and leave the jungle and come home, home is home. Home is a place of safety. Home is a place where they can run into and take a deep breath, like, you know what, I'm safe. So if we don't make the home comfortable for them and they're out there in the jungle, do they really want to come back to that same jungle? No. They want to have a safe space, and again, it's about helping them, give them that safe space so that when they come home, they feel safe. And that safe means they're safe emotionally, they're safe physically, they're safe psychologically. They have somebody that they can talk to. At least they may not even if they don't say all, but at least they can express certain things about their worries. They have somebody that they can lean on. So again, it's about trying a possible best to make sure that we produce that conducive environment for them where they can express themselves. It's also important to give them that cultural support. There's another thing that we talk cultural support. Cultural support, again, I think the worst thing, Nelly, that really affects our children is when they're caught up in two different cultures, but they really don't know which one to go for. And they really don't know which one to stand with, if you get what I mean. Like they have two different conflicting culture. The system where they are has its own culture. But then their origin, where their how can I put it? Where they are born, or maybe their culture, where they come from, has a different culture. And so these kids sometimes they're caught up in between. They don't know whether to go left or they don't know whether to go right, especially if we as parents don't really explain to them the values of our own culture. They get confused and then they get drawn into this other culture. And if they're not well prepared into this other culture, that culture may actually destroy them. I don't know whether you want to add something on that, Nelly.
Yeah, I think when it comes to culture, from my experience working with other families, I
Mm-hmm.
think communication is very important
Mm-hmm.
because children, okay, we want to introduce our children to culture. The way we introduce it is you have or you must do this, full stop.
Mm.
We were told that way and we did it because that was how the system operates or operated. But here is very different. If you want a child to embrace something, is to tell the child what it is and
Mm.
why. The child will embrace it more. So it goes back to what you've said. Yes, the child or our children are conflicted with two identities, two cultures. Say they go to school, they have a lot of other cultures in school,
Mm.
which they see 5 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
But then their culture of origin, they see probably once a month or once in 2 months or 3 months.
Mm.
But then they don't feel motivated to go there, probably because
Mm-hmm.
of the approach. And again, like here, when children go to school, friendships here is by age.
Mm-hmm.
If children go to school, they know their classmates are their age mates. But then when they're going to these cultural events, who do they know? If they know that there's someone their age that will be there, they will easily accept to go. But if they're not sure or they don't know that any child will be there, they might easily say they don't want to go because a lot of the times children play only with those of similar ages. So a
Mm-hmm.
child will not want to go to an event and then to sit by themselves because when they sit by themselves, they'll be on their gadgets. So then they'll prefer next time, I'll just sit at home.
Yeah.
So it goes back again to parents getting involved to explain to the child. And when you explain to the child, it doesn't mean that you have to force the child to go. Give the child the
Yeah.
options because
Yeah.
sometimes you force the child to go and the child goes out of respect. But
Mm-hmm.
then you just go and sit at a corner and you're thinking, oh my days, why did I even bring this child here? Because you see fully well that the child is not happy. They don't want to be there, but they have to be there because you brought them. Those for some parents, they don't it doesn't bother them because they just want the child to be there. And for such parents, I have realized is they just want to say, oh, yeah, that's my child. And whether the child feels comfortable or not, they don't even care. So it's for
Yeah.
parents to be very, very mindful.
Yeah, absolutely. That is so true. That is so true. And you're just saying, and if I tell you the number of times that I have, in fact, persuade I've tried to persuade my son so many times to follow me to some of these, our Cameroonian gatherings. Even though sometimes I'll say, you know what, so and so person is gonna be there, so and so is gonna be there. No, they're not interested. And just like you said, there's one thing to propose and there's another thing not to force. If they say, all the time he'll tell me, Mom, let me think about it, I'll make up my mind. And by the time I finish dressing, if he's not ready, and okay, I take that means no, that and I'll just go. I'll just go. But then me and the auntie, we went to this event and we were driving back around 11, in fact, it was nearly midnight, and he called me. He's like, Mom, when are you coming back? And please, can you bring me some takeaway when you're coming? And I was laughing. I was like, look at you. When I asked you that we should go together, you didn't want to go. And then you sitting waiting for me this late just because you want me to bring takeaway. What if I didn't? And he called me when I was already on my way coming. And luckily for him, African parents, being African parents, I had already done some little takeaway anyway. So again, like you said, these are things that sometimes it's good to tell them, like, so and so event is happening. It is about this thing. Would you like to come? It will be great for you to come. But again, at the end of the day, if they don't want to come, that's fine. But in a way, we are also telling them that where we come from in a community, we are a community, we've got a lot of social interaction. We go out there because in this culture, this other culture where they are, it's it's very unheard of that you see people come together just to eat and drink and dance, or people just meet, and do different things because it's not common. But for us, that is part of us. That is part of how we were brought up. So these are some of the cultures that we need to be telling our children that, hey, this is the reason why we do these things. And in that way, it also kind of empowers them, as they're growing. They know that they don't only know us as parents. The community is a bigger, wider community. They know this auntie, they know this uncle. Oh, I met this auntie at so and so event. Oh, I met this uncle at so and so event. And you can see that alone kind of give them, they know that they've got wings, they've got like spread of community, that they feel that it's social support network, if so to speak. So it's very, very important. And another thing that we were talking about is helping our children to embrace their identity with confidence, which I think which we've really talked expatiated on that, helping them to embrace their identity with confidence, not making them feel like where they're coming from is inferior. It's just like when my son went to school one time, the kids used to ask, are there houses in your country where you come from? And honestly, it made my son, because last year my last son went to Cameroon for the very first time. He's never been. And I remember when we're packing our stuff, preparing to go, and he asked me, he said, Mom, when we go there, where are we gonna sleep? I said, of course, there are houses. He said, what a bed? Do they have the normal beds that we have here? I said, of course, yes. You know, and he was like, okay, are we going to be drinking clean water? I was like, yes. So these are things that, again, they go to school and maybe they've heard it through the news, they've read it in reports, they've heard it from other children that where we come from is a wretched, dirty place and all of that. And to be honest with you, when we landed in Cameroon, and the first house that we went to, he was shocked. I remember when we walked into that house and he was like, oh, what? He was like, do they have nice houses like this? So these are some of the things that we need to expose our kids to so that they know that where they're coming from. And again, it can add confidence, make them know where they're coming from and add their confidence so that when they're talking, they know that they've been there. I'm sure now his perspective about Cameroon has changed because he's gone there, he's seen it, he's seen the
Yeah.
life that people live there. Now he can confidently defend himself wherever, you know, to
Yeah.
educate the others about his origin, where he's coming from.
Yeah, I think that's very, very. I mean, when you were talking, I was just laughing because my son had the same experience. Last year, we went to Cameroon, and since we've come back, it's over a year now. He can't stop talking of Cameroon
Yeah,
because his perception about Cameroon was very different from what he went there and saw. So
yeah,
now he is really proud that he's from Cameroon.
yeah,
So it is to expose our children to that origin because when they know it, it gives them a different sense of identity.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. So I don't know whether I want to talk on the last point, Nelly, building safe and empowering environment at home, which of course I think we've
Oof.
also touched on that.
Yeah, inclusion, to promote inclusion, when we are making certain decisions in the house, at home,
Hmm.
is to get the opinion of our children because
Yeah.
input might be small, even if you disregard their input, but listen to them, hear their opinion. Because, like, what I find is sometimes my children, when there's something like a decision that I'm struggling or something that I don't have a clear idea about, and I speak to them about, sometimes I'm really shocked that right away they just come up with answers. And I'm like, have you been doing this? Or how do you know? Because they just come up with answers. So it's good to get their side of things, get them involved in whatever you are doing. Ask them questions, ask them open questions, because like now the children are exposed to a lot of information, and sometimes they have certain information that we don't even have. So when we ask
Yeah.
these open questions, we really tap from the children. And
Yeah.
you've talked about your son coming back from school, and when you ask, there are certain questions like how are you. To me, I've said that how are you has to be taken off the English language, because what does
Yeah.
that even mean? Because
Yeah.
you see someone say at the hospital, and you ask how are you. I'm fine. If you're fine, what are you doing at the hospital?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
when we ask such questions, is to follow up those questions with open-ended questions, ask people to understand. So now, like what I do, especially, I mean, I try not to do that when I'm out and about, but when I'm having coaching sessions and I ask, how are you? And say my client said, I'm fine. I said, what does fine mean? Because your fine is different from my fine. I don't know what's going on with you. So if you can tell me what is going on with you, break it like that. And then they'll open up. That's the same thing we need to do with our children. Because sometimes children will just give one word answers, and that is it. Yes, no, depending on how we ask the questions. Because I think it's one of the coaches, John Maxwell, says that, or someone, that the quality of your question determines the quality of your answer. So if we
Absolutely.
ask good open questions, we will get good open answers or extended
Yeah.
answers.
And
So that is how we.
there's one
Mm,
just sorry, just to add on that. There was one thing that's in fact it's my mentor, Christine. She always she has actually made it in such a way that every time I meet with her for every coaching session, the first thing she'll ask her, what are the three things you're happy with right now? And what are the three things that you're not happy with? Or you're is no, what are the three? Tell me three things that is going well for you, and tell me three things that are going not too well for you. So it's that sort of thing that even in the journal that I drafted, the teenager journal that I put publish on this thing on Amazon. It
Mm.
made me kind of write it there. It says, tell me 3 lessons I've learned today. 3 lessons I've learned. Because one thing we always focus on is the mistakes that we've made. Oh, today I was messed up. I made this. I made so and so mistake. But no, they are not mistakes, they're lesson we've learned. If we tweak it round, then it becomes empowering rather than being, making us feel like we're powerless or we're dumb. So yes, that's another way where maybe you can, as parents, we can like ask them what are the 3 things that are going well or that went well for you today. In that way, it gives them the opportunity to chat, to talk more, and what are the 3 things that they don't feel too good about, and it also helps them to kind of express, which can lead to more to further question and conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 that's it. And then besides supporting our children at home, it's also we can support our children in school.
Mm,
And it is, I mean, we've talked about this in previous sessions for parents to know what is going on with children in school.
mm,
Attend parents' evening, look into the children's diaries, and even if you don't, even I mean, I know we're busy, but create that time. Even if you don't have the time every day to check in their diaries, give the child that responsibility that if there's any changes, let them tell you.
yes.
So then the child knows that if there's any information, they need to come and tell you. And then spend like even 5 minutes will go a long way to discuss
Mm-hmm.
about it. And then if there's any correspondence from school, keep up to date with correspondence in school because sometimes parents get so busy, they send correspondence and parents never even know that they've sent correspondence. That's where you can give your child that responsibility because most of the times before school sends correspondence home, the children already know because they tell them when they have assembly.
Yeah.
So if you give that responsibility to the child will be keeping you informed. And the child will take upon themselves that they have a task or they have a job or something. They like to put a little title to the side. So it's to give that
Exactly.
child that responsibility.
Absolutely. Talking about responsibility. This is a form. He was given this form. I don't know when they gave him this form. They're submitting the form tomorrow. And it's just today that he came and he like, I was like, why did they give you this form? And when did they? It has been in his bag. He's been carrying it for more than a week. So,
I know that
uh,
fully well.
yeah. So
Sometimes
now he
it's in
knows
the
that.
morning when they have like 5 minutes to leave the house.
So I need to find time now to read over the form and then before I sign and then he give him so that he hands it tomorrow. Otherwise, he's gonna get into trouble.
Hope he doesn't forget because that's another one.
Oh, parents. So yes, I think we've covered quite a few things which I think that we've learned from it because
Yeah.
I've learned from some experiences that you've shared, and this is also important because, like I always say, there is no one fit size or one size fits all. Every experience is different. Is different. It's about what do we need to know and how can we use that information to make sure that we become better people and as well give the best that we can give to our children. And it's not about being perfect. There's sometimes that as parents we feel like no, everything needs to be going okay. No, things are not going to go all right. There's some days that you come back home, you feel like what, this whole thing is whatever. But it's about making sure that we're kind to ourselves, making sure that we acknowledge what we're doing and making sure that we grow in the process, because it's a learning curve. We make mistakes, we fall, we grow, we learn. The sad side is, if we don't learn in that process, that's what keeps us stagnant and make things worse. So we've talked about, again, identity, helping our children find their identity. We've talked about discrimination, helping them to make sure that they can defend themselves, and make sure that, if they know who they are, know their identity, then they can stand up for themselves. And helping them to know that if they know their identity, then they can easily fit in into wherever society they put them. Because if they know their identity, take them here, put them in a desert, they will still know how to fit in. We've talked about how we can make the home conducive for them, so that it becomes a safe space for them to express themselves and how they're feeling. We've talked about how we can support them emotionally and give them that cultural support, so that they're not caught up in two cultures, not knowing where to go. We can actually tell them the value, the importance, the richness of our culture, so that they can embrace that culture with pride. We've talked about helping them to be inclusive. Like Nelly talked about being inclusive in anything that we're doing. If we're making any decision, no matter how small it is, we can always call them, because in that way we make them to feel valued. We make them to feel like their voice matters. And again, that also helps them to build that self-esteem and that self-confidence wherever they go. So I don't know, Nelly, if I summarized, I think you want to add something there before
You've
we
summarized it really, really well. I think it's the aspect of school. We need to
Yes.
get involved with our children, give them little responsibilities like
Mhm.
correspondence from school. Let
Yeah.
them be reminding parents about the correspondence from school, and just making our children to feel valued, and that whatever they do is fully appreciated. Just to create that nurturing environment so the children want to make contribution, because when you give a child the opportunity, children want to always teach the parents, because they feel that it's a pride that, see, my parents, my mom, my dad doesn't know that, and I am the one who is teaching it. And children like it, because to them it's a responsibility, and they feel like they are grown up, which is really good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I think that is it for today. Like Nelly and I said, this session was a recorded session, but please, that doesn't stop you from putting your comments. If you're watching later, put your comment. We're gonna read your comments. And again, that we say, if there are, like we always say, if there are any topics that you want us to talk about, put them on there. And then Nelly and I, we're going to come on and have a talk about it. And remember, when we come here to talk, we don't go read somewhere. We just talk, we just pour it from the heart. Yes, Nelly, we bring in our expertise, in terms of where in terms of our experiences, as well as other researches that we've done, or maybe things, but at the end of the day, we pour it from our hearts, because we are parents as well, and we've gone through the experiences. So again, we hope that you, listening to it, you've learned something. And if you've learned something, please put it into practice. At the end of the day, we just want that you give your best that you can give to your child, and your child will thank you tomorrow for it. Even if they don't thank you tomorrow for it, universe is going to thank you for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so, so much. And it's always a pleasure having these sessions, because we learn, we are open to learning as well. Because if we stop learning, then we go to the grave, but we are still open. We want to keep learning. So, yes, please, we need you, we need your support to help us learn as well. So, thank you for this session, and we wish you all the best. We know this is recorded, but we will read all your comments. And if you want to join us on the panel, please send us a message, DM, and we will get to you. Thank you so much, and have a nice weekend.
Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.